What would you like to see in a film about Port Adelaide?
The people of Port Adelaide. They're the things that make the port work. And the thing that didn't work, and we're changing, is when we went for the redevelopment, we concentrated too much on the buildings and not enough on the people.
And by Christ, there's some characters in this part of the world.
The old generation's slowly disappearing. You can see. I'm a sportsman. Do they play football hard like we did 20, 30 years ago? I don't think so.
I guess I've only been there for 10 years and I consider myself a Port Adelaide person. I just think it's all sorts of people. Then you go along to the citizenship ceremony and there's people of all sorts of backgrounds there, coming from overseas, and go, wow, there's actually a lot to Port Adelaide that we don't know about.
I can walk down the streets of the port and Semaphore and surrounding areas. There are lots of faces that I no longer recognise. There's a new face of people moving in here. And those people who are moving in, paying $1 million for their properties on the Esplanade at Semaphore, want something a bit more than what Port Adelaide has to offer at the moment, for sure.
A lot of it's just the generations. What do they want? They've tried the arty-farty, if I could say that. It's failed.
I don't know if it's failed.
We've got an amazing arts structure in Port Adelaide.
I think that there are a number of things that matter in the port, a number of elements that make the port what the port is, and one of those elements is the arts. Absolutely. There are great artists around here.
Arts Mill as the art and craft centre, I don't really think that, for me, is not what I would like to see. I'd like to see the Maritime Museum put there, next to the TAFE, next to the water, next to the one and all, so it all mixes in together. And I'd like the art craft bit to go to Lipson Street where the Maritime Museum is. I think that then it all mixes in together and,
It plays on its strengths.
It does, yeah.
Port is what it is. It's got everything there. You're not actually making anything new happen. All you're doing is just highlighting it, putting it into a place that people can see it, and everyone just goes, wow, I didn't know all this was here, and it's always been here.
But the place needs a fucking shake-up.
We don't want a lake. There's a lake at West Lakes. We want a working port. We want a Port Adelaide where it's a port, and exactly that. So we want ships coming in and out. Our boat building I'd like to see back in some form.
Question for all three of our guests here tonight. Could I please have my boatyard back?
I would love that to happen.
We want activity in the port. We don't want an empty lake.
You want a Port Adelaide that works?
A Port Adelaide that works,
To
yes.
bring up the Sunday market at Torrens Island, right opposite the power station down there, right?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yeah. Now that would be a great thing to happen in the port.
Well, I'd like to see it go in the Fisherman's Wharf. Or second venue is down by the Coal Lake Hotel.
Well, they used to have the markets just down here, and I used to bring the kids in on a Sunday morning, my husband and I, to buy the fish, and to do all that things. And then when that's finished, we used to go out to the island and do all that and do the shopping and that out there. But it would be better for them to come back here into the port and do it instead of travelling all that way.
Have you got any thoughts on where it should go?
I want to see it in the inner harbour. I'm not fussed about whether it's around the Harts Mill precinct, McLaren Wharf, Dock 1. I think what matters is getting people into that inner harbour area, and then whatever works most practically is what I'd support.
Definitely, I feel the fish markets need to be where it says Fisherman's Market. It's for the 10 years or more I've been here, I've lost count of how many times people ask us where they can buy their fresh fish here. And of course they come down here and we say, well, that market is only open on Sunday. So that's a disappointment usually, because a lot of people come on Saturdays or Fridays or whatever. In the holidays they come any day. But apart from that, even when they're open on a Sunday, they'll ask where they can buy fresh seafood. And we say, well, you can't. They can force the issue by saying, if you're not using this space on a certain percentage of time, which is going to be to the betterment of the whole of the area, including tourists coming down here, then perhaps we do need to look at forcing some sort of compulsory action. I do believe they will do those things to other people, and they have certainly forced other people out of their businesses without a blink of an eye.
And in fact, they've done it around here, taken away their livelihoods and then done nothing with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. The boatyard.
I think it's been damaged. The port has been damaged so much in the last 15, 20 years, and I strongly believe that we can repair some of the damage and build a better future.
And here you're talking about Renew Port Adelaide, I dare say. Yeah. Is it another committee?
Well, I don't think it is. I think the power of the committee is that it's backed by the Premier and also by this new Renewal SA process.
And it's backed by this Premier?
This particular Premier, that's right.
We had a lot of false starts and people are sick and tired of that, but we've got a lump of money we've put on the table. The locals are now telling us how they should spend it.
It'd be interesting to be able to attract people to the water and use the water. And that's something's happening down there at the moment in terms of Crookshanks Corner and getting in community involvement there in terms of clubs. Crookshanks Corner, very close to where the bridge is at the moment, where that beach is. Yeah, they're going to, hopefully a building would go in there, a community function building which would be there for things like dragon boats, for rowing boats, for, I don't know, kayakers. They've got kayaking at West Lakes. And you'll see more activity this side and the other side. At the moment you see nothing on the water.
Yeah, but there's heaps over at West Lakes. And it's the same water.
Yeah, it is the same water. It's exactly the same water.
We learned to swim in the Port River when we were kids. You ever see kids swimming in the Port River nowadays? We've jumped off the Jervois Bridge. You ever see kids do that?
And it's been cleaned up since
then. And it's been cleaned up, mate. We put, they've seen plenty of stuff in the Port River years ago.
Ships emptied their sewage quite often into the water, and there was, dogs that were no longer needed. We sort of found floating past. It was pretty messy.
Yeah, well, we learnt to swim in the canal with they put a belt round our middle and held a big long pole, and the man would stand on the wharf and we'd be down in the water and we'd swim along. We learnt to swim there.
We had what was called the belt, and an old character called Itchy Guy Nell was almost legend, that he'd take you out on the barges with a belt around your waist and a long stick, but he'd always get into a conversation while he was doing it, and you'd find yourself getting pushed further and further under the water, and oops, back and lift you up again. You sort of.
Well, I used to have a swimming club in the port, but they used to have the Ethelton on one side, and the port would round down this side.
I used to go crabbing with a piece of string on the port wharf there, and with a dobby net, and you could see them on the bed floor, and you'd have a raw bit of meat tied on a piece of string, right, and that string come up to you, and you'd wait there, and then up, he's on there, and you'd slowly bring it up. Sometimes they go up, but a lot of times they wouldn't, see. And you can bring them up, and then you get ready for your dobby net. As soon as you thought you'd get underneath water up, whew. Now that's how clear the water was.
And I would say that there's a good chance that we could put in a deep water pool right next to us here on this wharf here. You've also got this deep water diving concept, which a lot of kids are really into, but they don't have the opportunity to do that. So they're diving from quite a height and doing bombs and whatever. It was something that we used to do as kids too.
Those who are a bit softer swam at Ethelton, where Peter did. They actually had water you could see through. Ours you could walk on.
But that's changed?
It's changed. Now it seems a lot clearer. The water quality apparently is better now than it was then, I've heard from the EPA.
I think it was last year at one of the meetings, council meetings, brought up that it has got to the stage that they can hold Ironman events. You can swim in the river. It is of a quality that's not going to hurt anybody, which everyone has for years and years is, oh, I'm not going in there, that's crazy.
So really the water's good enough quality, and that's been proven to be able to swim in it, and they swim at West Lakes. We're not that far away from West Lakes. So this whole area, this whole square here, could come alive by people just regularly coming to it, and that could be office workers during the day, or could be whole families coming down here, and then you utilise this whole area around us.
We've got it all there. It really doesn't take a lot in my mind, but maybe I'm a simple-minded person, but you know, when I talk with people in the community, it's similar sorts of views, and that's our role. We're a voice for our community.
Now tell me about what you'd like to see happen in Port Adelaide.
Well, I'd honestly absolutely love an adventure playground.
What would you like to see in it?
The whole area could be built up using safety grids, tubes that wander around and kids crawl through them. And I've seen them in America, and they suspend planes from skyscrapers and then have these tubes going up to meet them. You can see the kids, you can see everything. It's just, but if you have that on a much lower scale, you're not looking for that high, but you have tool ships and some steamers in there. I mean, you have cranes lowering down elephants. There's heaps of circus elephants were unloaded in the port.
Yeah, actually now, the circuses that arrive from overseas, right, lions and tigers, the witch, the ship, bring up these cages, if you like, but they were blackened off. You couldn't see anything, what was inside. But the draft horses knew what was in there, because once they got the smell of it, right, these animals inside, whether it be lions or tigers, right, they would go berserk and they would break loose, and many a time they'd be galloping down round North Adelaide.
A Catalina off another crane, a huge big flying ship quite a few of them came into the port.
Yeah, and I saw this bit on the internet. The first thing that I suggested should happen in the port when I was the candidate for the by-election was a playground.
A playground's fantastic, and also I'm a local school teacher, so I see my students down the street after hours and go, you guys need something to do. You don't want to come back to school and play on our playground. You actually want to have something to do that's in the port, that feels exciting and a little bit different than the regular 9 to 3 sort of situation. So yeah, playgrounds and just nice green areas. There's not a lot of parks and free space. Hey.
And when I look at the success of Semaphore, we've been there 12 years, and in that time we've seen Semaphore be transformed from what was already gorgeous but fairly quiet to something that's really humming. And I look at the elements of success there, and there's fantastic public realm that's been invested in all along the road. There's the foreshore, there's 4 playgrounds almost within walking distance. It's a fair clip from number 1 to number 4, but they're pretty close together. And then there's a community that has interesting ideas about what kind of shops you might have. Well, I think we have almost all those elements here. What's let us down is the public realm recently, and that's where the early activation works that the government's proposing to do with the council funding as well over the next 12 months. I think will make a very big difference, because it will lift the public space, it'll attract people to the port, and then you will start to see private investment.
Now when you talk about the early activation, so
Yes.
that's possibly for things like a playground?
Absolutely. Early activation is $7.2 million being spent in the public realm around the inner harbour largely. So there's the biking and walking loop that will go around the harbour. Around outside the Harts Mill Adelaide Milling Company precinct, down at that end, we're going to do some greening, shade cloth, barbecue and playground.
Now, fixing something in Harts Mill and starting to pretty that up, what for? That is not going to help business people in this area.
It's not.
It is
It's not the centre
I
of the
agree that once this is moving, that by all means will be fantastic, or if they want to do it all at once. But if they're just doing one thing, don't start over there, because every bit of money they spend will be down the drain as usual.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, over on Dock 1, of course, you've got that huge empty space, and that's where that cafe precinct in Lipson Street and that is already there. Is that something that is possible?
Well, I certainly think that the cafe precinct, etc., is going to be really a key part of it.
Originally what they were doing when it was LMC, and they had the Celtic Festival and the art show, which don't happen anymore. But when they were happening, they were here first, very successful, straight away. Moved it down to Harts Mill. Why? Why did they do that? I'll tell you why. Because that backdrop showed their, oh, look what we're doing. Look at the new buildings and look at the revitalisation and the rejuvenation of Port. That's what it was all about, to showcase that. Didn't work, didn't happen, was not successful. Most people said there was no facilities over there. The facilities were all over here. We got an overflow of some people coming into the area through the businesses here, which was great, but we would have had the full force if it had been here how it started, and people would have enjoyed it much better because they would have been amongst all the things that are happening here. Down there was just dirt, dust and an old empty building with no shops, no businesses, but what they were doing was bringing other businesses in that were willing to pay some money to hold food stalls and drinks and all that. Businesses from other suburbs, so we were funding them to make more money again instead of looking after our businesses that are already here. And they do it time and time again.
I mean, this playground that Susan and others are talking about, how big will it be?
Well, that's yet to be determined. My view about that is that it should be a very central feature.
So that'll be a place, an attraction for people to come along.
What sort of playground?
Time. I believe that that is still up for discussion.
Really? Something
major,
like bigger than St Kilda?
That would be fantastic, something like that.
Because it's the only commitment we've got. They've got 7.2 million.
Yeah.
Please don't waste that.
You can't do a lot with 7.2 million, but you could make one surefire playground out of it.
St Kilda is in my electorate, and I know that that level of playground, which is extremely exciting for children, would be very attractive, but I think that we would want to do something with a maritime theme, something that brings together what the port is with what kids want to do to have fun.
Well, see, I think that St Kilda is a great opportunity for, you know, that type of thing up here would be fantastic. You know, the Flying Fox, well, there's risk involved, but...
Well, they've got flying foxes at St Kilda.
Yeah, but I mean, it's fantastic. I had a great time with them myself.
Yeah. What other sort of stuff could you build that would be safe and fun?
What he was saying about these poly pipes or these plastic pipes is a good idea. It's safe, it's contained.
Playground, fantastic. There's nothing around here, especially on a Saturday when it's a bit quieter. Sundays we've got the market, and it makes the port look family friendly instead of, you know, it's a bit more of an adults playground, I suppose, at the moment. So adults love it and they come down here and think, you know, the buildings are fantastic and all that, but also making the children's playgrounds.
I think that would be amazing, and I think that they could do that, even though it's down by Pivot Incitec. I mean, that area there of the wharf, I think would be a great area. I mean, people would then, as you said, come with families and they'd come in their droves to be there. You know, it would once again be a destination. You'd come for the destination, then you would enjoy the rest of what's around, and we can build on that.
Yes, yes, yes. Now that'd be a great thing. That area where the causeway goes across, around there somewhere, would make a great area for that. Yeah.
If we're not, especially in the medium term now, you know, 10 to 15 years, going to be able to build there, you know, for people to live, why not be able to utilise it for that sort of activity, a recreational area that that would bring a lot of people, definitely.
How many people come and play paintball every year?
Every year? Oh, probably something like about somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000.
And do they tend to be from Port Adelaide, or are they from elsewhere?
Oh no, we bring people from Port Augusta, Whyalla, Victor Harbour, all over the place.
Yeah, so kids will travel a long way for a good time.
Loxton, yeah.
And there was the proposal of building that drag strip around here at Torrens Island. It would have been a winner. It would have been a winner. You could tie up the boat racing. You know, they got the speedway there, and it would have been a winner. You know, sure, it would have taken a lot of money. But I bet you in 5 years' time, Saturday night, drag racing at Torrens Island, mate, you get 15,000 people there. Then you can try drag racing, you can try speedboat racing. motorbikes, you know, you're bringing things for the people. Not everybody is into art.
We're all responsible for the Port Adelaide future and the way it is at the moment. We need to be progressive. We need to think up ideas, put them out there. Whether or not they're ever picked up on doesn't matter, but we must show that we are thinking of ideas to promote the port.
Putting it bluntly, people also do have to get off their arse, not just complain about it, put forward their ideas, you know, quite loudly and say, look, hang about, we didn't like that, we should have stood up earlier, we should have made our views known, but seeing as we've got a second chance at maybe having something to do with how this is going to get set out, this is what we want. And yeah, it'd be good. And just locally, people aren't always confident about saying things, but that's what their councillors are for. That's what their ward councillors are for. You go forward and say, listen, I'd really like you to bring this up at a meeting. I've had opinions put to me that I don't agree with, but I've been asked to put them forward. And just because I don't agree with them doesn't mean that I can't put them forward, because that's what I'm supposed to do.
I don't know, you know, I mean, I've been speaking to the Mayor and I've probably got some of his insight into it, but he'd like to have a precinct, a museum precinct.
The facilities are there, we've got the museums, it's just not used in the way that it could be.
Well, yeah, there was an idea floated with it. They would focus all the museums down in that area there, bring in the tram museum back into the area, have the military vehicles down the area, have the aviation, all in that area. And in fact, you could run a tram round and from one museum to the next and have a continuous ride going around, hop off then, jump on there. It was floated, but I don't think it got very far.
But it would sort of be like an extension of the Railway Museum's train ride.
Yeah. Yep.
Something I've been pushing as yet unsuccessfully, but I'm still raising it whenever anyone will let me, is running, just trialling, let's see if it works, running metropolitan trains down the track to the Railway Museum, because the trains can go through, there's no physical impediment, the line is there, and they do have a platform at Jackets just next to the Railway Museum. It's part of the Railway Museum, but equally you're able to get out and just go out. You don't have to go into the museum. You could set it up so that it could be just people who want to go into Port Adelaide. I've been suggesting that we could at least trial that during school holidays and see if it caused people to think, oh, we'll go to Port Adelaide.
If the car museum came down from Birdwood, you know, that would be an amazing thing. And I think that it could fit in there, it could fit along that precinct there. And
it builds on a strength.
It would, and people would come for that, and then they would come and they'd stay in the cafes and they'd spend money at Port Adelaide, and you'd have a whole lot more people there.
Where would they stay?
Where would they stay? Now that's an interesting thing.
Accommodation for visitors is a massive thing. I've talked to friends from interstate about, you know, where I live, and where do you stay? Business people, where do they stay overnight? There's nothing here. And the backpacker side of things, again, if we get the light rail down through here, you make it easy for people to get down and get to Port Adelaide for a start. There are people that want to come down and stay by the water. They want to do it.
At the moment we haven't got much. I think the warehouses could be built to accommodate people if they're coming down. I was just thinking this morning that the Seamen's Mission that's on Niles Street, which has been closed to seamen recently, great backpackers place. You know, it's got all the amenities. I don't know whether you've been in there, but it's got a big area they can congregate. It's got, you know, bathrooms, toilets, all the things that you need, those, and a kitchen. So that's what you need. And then and it's opposite the wharf, so they've got somewhere to go. They've got a destination to go to once they get here, and they can make Port Adelaide, you know, their home base and go from here and explore South Australia.
I have low budget accommodation here and it's full all the time, which is fabulous. You know, if I had some support and resources, I would love to get something major here happening for accommodation further up. But of course, I've probably, at the way things are now, I wouldn't be able to do it on my own.
The other thing about accommodation is the sort of thing that you're talking about, the possibility of developing the Customs House. And I just do think that that is an iconic building. it's really important that we find a way for the owner to move ahead. Obviously there's a bit of considerable commercial negotiations happening about that. Who knows what will happen. But it will be a great day for the port when that's opened up, and I know that there's been suggestions floated around that that might be a backpackers or a 3-star type hotel. That would be fabulous.
It'll sit there and collect all its dirt and crap for God knows how many more years unless the government actually force that issue. They say they can't, but they can.
I personally think that we've got to bring people to live in Port Adelaide again. I'm not sure how you go about that, but they've got to, if they go ahead and do housing, the housing has to be made like the old colonial type houses, a little bricky type place, like over in the rocks in Sydney. I'm just, it's quaint but smart. They don't have to be big, and they have to be somehow or other, nobody knows really the answer to this, they have to be affordable, so people can bloody well afford to live there.
One of my major critiques of the previous show was that they were excused from the state government's requirement for 15% affordable housing. And they absolutely refused opportunities which people like United Care Wesley Port Adelaide offered them, was the opportunity to integrate affordable housing for low-income people within their planning. And I think that one of the things that alienated local community is that there was no transition of housing type. People on reasonable incomes or low incomes just couldn't be part of it. Now I think some of the accommodation is much cheaper than they anticipated.
They've ended up with affordable housing.
They end up with low income housing because no one wants to live in them.
I think the best thing that's happened is that Jay Weatherall has taken out of the hands of the developers who were supposed to develop Port Adelaide in a proper and decent way. He's completely taken that out of their hands, and now it's been taken over by the state government. I was one of the people in the National Trust who went up to town and appealed against them, their next development, and we got them stopped. We were quite surprised with our success, but we put a good argument, and eventually it stopped them. They had to go back to the drawing board again, and they never at any time came up with a plan that was suitable.
I think that it is really important that we specifically invite a range of developers. And the thing that's different about the new development and the way it's structured is that whereas in the past only one group could develop all of it, now it's going to be able to be put into parcels. So somebody who wants to build 10 houses can build something. Someone who wants to build 20 or 200. So people like housing associations will have an opportunity to invest in the middle of the Port Adelaide, put up 10 units or houses, maybe for people who need wheelchair access or people who are on lower incomes for various reasons. And some housing associations might think about putting a mixture, perhaps selling a few houses and building a few for low-income people. So I think the housing situation can now be opened up and be a lot more interesting and a lot more accessible to people.
This place deserves the best. It's a bloody fantastic part of the world, but I'm tired of the politics. It seems to be politically driven, Port Adelaide, and I think that...
Or maybe politically not driven.
Well, it needs an incredible shake-up, Port Adelaide, from the bloody CEO right through the ranks. I've never seen so much waste in all my 58 years. It's just a pitiful what's wasted. Talk, more waste.
I came over 25 years ago from Semaphore because the port was happening, and it's still happening. The port's no longer dead. It's bloody decomposing. Woolworths have just moved out.
And Mitre 10.
Mitre 10. You can't buy fish and chips in Port Adelaide. That's pretty sinful.
Look at the money they have spent in Port Adelaide and what can you see for it?
Fuck all.
Commercial Road and St Vincent Street We've got so many closed shops, so many broken down buildings, so many closed pubs.
Down here in St Vincent Street, that building that were underneath where those girls own the coffee shop, above it there, it's fantastic what they've done to that little bit of the roof.
I've heard about it.
The roof that's been done. But the rest of it's shit house, that old pub there. Shit house. It should be put under pressure. Fucking clean it up.
The Mayor actually tried putting it through council, and we agreed entirely that we try and pass a bylaw that of compulsory acquisition if they weren't fixed up. Unfortunately, that didn't get any further than council, and I think the state government put a squash on that. A lot of them are only being used for collateral for people who've got buildings elsewhere, and they don't want them done up, because if they're done up, they pay more rates of improved value.
One of the things that we're doing with the 7.2 million is realigning the traffic so that there can be angle parking in front of those shops. Something that Barry Schultz from the Mayfair Bakery has been asking for some time, which will mean that people like on Semaphore Road can hop in and out easily. At the moment, the parking in front there is very scarce, and it makes it very difficult for them to have regular customers just coming in and out, in and out. So that's one of the things that we're also spending a bit of money on to kind of activate that part. A lot of these suggestions that people have really are about wanting the private sector to invest in something, whether it's a backpackers, a hotel, service departments. And I think what we need to do is say, what can government and council and community, what can we do to make this a place where private people will invest in that? You can't expect a council or a state government to start running a hotel or to buy up all the buildings and refurbish them, and I'm not sure that anyone would expect that.
Do we need another committee?
No. If you do one more committee, I swear to God, it's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. No more. No more. And only because I hear it every day in here, you know, and I've been here like in the port 6 years, I trade 364 days and I've heard it. No more, no more. You've done, there's enough stuff on paper now, so please just do something. So.
Cool, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks Derek.
And we will see development in the future, but be a development which will be properly done.
You know, it's people that make places, and then places become successful, and that's how the money works. You know, people want to be there, they want to live there, people want to live there, investors see an opportunity, and then you go from decay to renewal, and then you start getting a great suburb. And I think, you know, the port's got a lot of exciting, you know, prospects in front of it.
Inherent strengths.
Great strengths. There's an above average number of people that live in and around that area that care about it, that know and love its history and want it to be a success. And all we've got to do is just tap into that energy.
Oh, you better you film.
Why can't we form a spot or have a place where we can bring in the colonial exhibition that's been hidden in the bowels of the SA gallery and very rarely is looked at? And whereas, you know, this is one of the first portals for any South Australian population, and those paintings are describing that era and, you know, the sort of people that came and developed this area. It should be out and it should be viewed, and it should be a starting point for anyone visiting the state to come and see an exhibition. And yes, it should be housed in a proper spot. It should be available. We pay for its storage. Why can't we pay to look at it too?